This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Memhard, and I'm the Ward One City Councilor and Chair of our Budget and Finance Committee. Joining us this evening are Tony Gross and Jeff Worthley, both at-large councilors and members of the Budget and Finance Committee. We're going to take items slightly out of order for budget tonight in that Greg Cadamatori, our Planning Director and Acting Community Development Director, needs to get to a planning board meeting. But first I'll announce that consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted remotely by remote participation, and the public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate whenever necessary. If you're calling in by phone, you can follow the instructions pressing *9 to request to speak. And if you're watching on a computer or device, there is a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Either of these options may be used to be recognized to speak. As I said, I'm going to take things slightly out of order, and the first item for this evening on the agenda will be, in fact, the let's see. Greg, you have two items, correct?
Yes. Sorry.
So the first
too many windows open.
Yeah, I've got the same kind of problem. But so you're dealing with the interim. We have the two Harbortown Cultural, the Rocky Neck Cultural District and the Harbortown Cultural District awards from the Mass Cultural Grant Council grants. First item.
Yes, so this is a grant program that the Mass Cultural Council, I'm not sure if they initiated it last year, but there were successful awards to both the Harbortown Cultural District as well as the Rocky Neck Cultural District. The funds were used to support if folks took advantage of the Cultural Splash. It was a event that was conducted over several Thursday evenings in the summertime. And the intention, I believe, is to use the funding in a similar manner to try to enhance that effort for the coming summer months. So each of the cultural districts received $7,500, and that will go towards supporting those efforts going forward. There is no matching funds associated with this. It is a strict grant, but it will support the operating funds of the two cultural districts.
And we might comment that Gloucester is very unusual and unique in that we host two Massachusetts cultural districts within our bounds. And I think that, in fact, this is about the fifth or maybe even the sixth year that we've received these or comparable grants from the state.
And I believe if you want any additional information, if you can promote Rocky Neck Art Colony, that's Courtney, who's the executive director for the Rocky Neck Cultural District.
Yeah, Courtney Richardson.
Yes, sorry.
Any questions from councilors? Is Courtney here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can indeed. Welcome, Courtney.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you.
Oh, great. Good to see you too.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you are able to utilize this grant?
Sure. It's just like Greg said, to continue to support the Culture Splash activity like we did last summer. And then we're also hoping to redo the visitor sign at the parking lot. It needs to be updated, and we're going to put some funds into that as well.
Sounds good and appropriate. Councilors? Tony?
Council member?
Sounds good to me.
Yes.
I don't have questions about the grant. I think it's fantastic that we have additional money coming in for this. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Courtney. If I could just ask a few very brief questions. I was going to ask this: what is the cultural district budget for Rocky Neck, and is it sufficient for your needs in your opinion?
That's a great question. We don't, for this grant in particular, we budgeted for, I think, 11,500 in hopes that we'd be able to continue with the harbor shuttle and also make some of the improvements I talked about. We haven't really set a budget for the district, and I think I could still say I'm new enough that I'm not familiar with that happening in the past, but maybe it has. So I can circle back with my partners and see if that's something we should be doing each year.
I'm just curious if the city's supporting it the way that it can be, and if there's other opportunities either through, I know that there was a tax on restaurants, I think, and the money is supposed to go toward tourism related things. And if there's a connectivity with Rocky Neck, you don't need to circle back in terms of this grant. I'm happy to move forward with it, Council Memhard, and thank you for putting this together.
Thanks.
Greg, do we have anybody speaking to the downtown district?
It currently really doesn't have an organizational structure at this point. We have the designation, and so there was really a lot of partnership between Rocky Neck Cultural District and Community Development Department staff in the development of the Culture Splash and also its implementation. So that's definitely, I think, a topic for the administration moving forward to how to additionally support the Downtown Cultural District or the Harbortown Cultural District.
Sounds good. Tony, do you have any question?
No, I'm good.
If there are no further questions, I'll go ahead and make this that there are actually two motions. The first is to move to accept a state grant under Mass General Law 4453A from the Massachusetts Cultural Council for fiscal year 2022 Cultural District Initiative grants in the amount of $7,500 for the purpose of supporting the Rocky Neck Cultural District and financial assistance to support personnel, marketing, artist stipends, and free public transportation for summer Thursday evening cultural events located at the Rocky Neck Cultural Center District and the Downtown Harbor Town Cultural District. The grant period of the grant is from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, and there is no local match for this grant, and I so move.
Second.
Any further discussion or comment? Roll call vote. Councilor Gross?
Yes.
Councilor Worthley?
Yes.
Councilor Memhard, yes. Motion passes unanimously. The second part of the motion relates to the second cultural district, and it's our motion to accept a state grant under Mass General Law 4453A from the Mass Cultural Council for a fiscal year 2022 Cultural District Initiative grant in the amount of another $7,500. This is for the purpose of supporting the Gloucester's Downtown Harbor Town Cultural District and financial assistance to partner with the Rocky Neck Cultural District to plan and market Thursday evening cultural experiences in the summer, highlighting the numerous cultural assets in the Downtown Harbor Town Cultural District and the Rocky Neck Cultural District. The grant period again is from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, and there is no local match, and I so move.
Second.
Second.
Seconded and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Being none, roll call vote. Councilor Gross?
Yes.
And Councilor Worthley?
Yes.
Councilor Memhard, yes. Passes unanimously. Again, carry on, Courtney.
Thanks for all you do.
May
Thank
the summer
you.
be with you. Okay, and Greg, your second item tonight. Help me here. What do we have from you?
It's matter number 6, Councilor Memhard.
Greg, you're muted.
Memorandum from the Interim Community Development Director requesting acceptance of a National Grid Mass Save sponsored Community First Partnership Grant in the amount of $40,000. Greg, can we speak to that?
Sorry for that. I had the Zoom screen behind all the other windows that I've opened. Councilors, new and also those that have been on the council for a while might recall a few years back, we participated in a program that was called the Community Initiative, which was very similar to this program, where we received some funding for marketing campaigns to make people aware of the Mass Save program and the opportunities that are out there for weatherization and energy efficiency. There are free home audits that are conducted by Mass Save with the ultimate goal of trying to increase efficiency and save people money. Over the course of 2 years, I think we had about 1,200 folks that signed up for the audits because of our efforts in marketing those programs. And so they have kind of revamped this quite a bit. It has now kind of been handed off by National Grid to more of an agency that's kind of managing these grants. And so there are targets that are a little bit different than in the past, where it's about what actually gets done rather than just the audits themselves. So the grant funding will help support the hiring of a part-time staff person that'll be dedicated, at a certain number of hours per week to assisting with the marketing of this program. There's a lot of support that comes from the program support as well, in terms of marketing materials and really the education component of letting people know what's available. And again, they also maximize incentives for these types of energy efficiencies that can happen in a home. And it's really perfect timing because it's probably one of the first things that would come out of a recommendation of the climate action and resilience planning effort that's being hosted by the Clean Energy Commission. We know that our built environment buildings make up most of what we're emitting in terms of greenhouse gas emissions from the use of fossil fuels, and also electricity that's backed by fossil fuel plants. So this is one of those areas that needs to be targeted if there are goals in overall reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So this is just a great way to try to provide some additional support to connect residents with the opportunities that they might be able to take on themselves.
Can't beat that. Councilors, do we have any questions or comments for Planning Director? Community Development Interim.
Yeah, Greg, I'm sorry to keep you a little bit longer, but we just recently had a permit for extra storage of propane tanks, and it was going into a home that was going to use 1 million BTUs basically to heat their driveways. And the installer discussed that there was another house right next door to them that does the exact same thing. I don't know, I assume this is going to be going into education in the schools and things. Is that part of what I saw on this?
It's mostly, it's mostly to the public, and it's a little bit more expansive than just, putting up a flyer on a website. It will be at hopefully in-person events as things seem to be declining and there's more opportunity. To that point in particular, I know that the Clean Energy Commission did discuss it. Councilor Grow had reached out. Part of the climate action and resilience planning effort also has kind of a companion piece of looking at, what are the ways in which we can regulate efficiency and also, sounder energy policy in construction. I think there have been a couple of examples where people have tried to move into that space of, for instance, prohibiting natural gas hookup and those types of things, which I don't know that they're very legally tenable at this point. But the idea of what we can infuse into our codes to promote renewables and energy efficiency is something that will also be coming forward. Probably within the next calendar year, of what the options are out there, what the best practices are. But I think there aren't very many limitations that in that particular instance of the selection of the type of fuel source that we really have in our quiver at this point to be able to say yes or no.
Yeah, also I'd like to say, reading that grant, Gemma earned her money on this grant, writing it. It was quite lengthy. So just like to pass that along to Gemma, please.
Yes, she's doing an excellent job.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Memhard.
Thank you, Tony. Councilor Worthley, yes.
Thank you. Greg, do we have a program like this? So this sounds like this is applicable for residents who want to improve their energy efficiency. Is that correct?
I mean, I should have said it's also for small business. So there are, they will basically run the gamut of what's available. There was a similar campaign that was hosted by the Chamber called Cape Ann Saves Energy, which was basically marketed through the Chamber to its membership and beyond, to try to bring those same types of opportunities to small business. It's basically the same incentive programs that were packaged in a different way. Unfortunately, they did not have a lot of positive response to it. I think some of these things are costly. That was really focused around, again, like the energy audit, giving people a sense of what the opportunities are. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think there was a lot of participation in it. This will be a continued effort to, make people aware of what's there. What somebody decided 3 years ago, they may change their mind. Incentive programs change as well. So it is applicable also potentially to small business.
Okay, so that was part of my question. The second part of that is, if I'm a resident or business owner that wants to take advantage of this, how do they go about doing it?
So we haven't really kicked it off yet. Right now, I mean, Mass Save still runs their programs, and they're always welcome to reach out. And if somebody wants to do something now, then by all means, we will go through a period of grant acceptance, hopefully, and then the hiring of that assistant. Probably putting together a campaign that would come in the warmer months, probably late spring into the summer and throughout the year. It is a 3-year program, so we will, continue to try to reach folks that, again, they may not be interested in at the moment. Properties change hands. There's new residents. Another topic for another meeting, I guess. So it is a pretty, continuous effort. It does fund somebody to be dedicated to this, to try to really provide as much information to folks as, and when they're ready to take that step. So we kind of have a budget for year one. There are targets associated with that to hopefully, provide people the information, see how, people respond to what they do. Again, it's all around typically trying to demonstrate also the savings that can be realized. And then we kind of reassess in year 2, and we'll set a new budget, and maybe potentially, maybe it'll increase. Maybe we're conservative in the first year, but if we, hopefully we surpass those targets.
Right. And Councilman Hart, if I can continue, just a couple more questions. I might have misunderstood this. Is this a grant to help with savings on energy, or is this a grant to pay for someone to have a position in the city to reach out to the community?
So the funding itself does not go to any specific activity in a home or that type of thing. It is the support network of marketing these programs to the public. We do have built into the budget, a portion of it goes towards towards a dedicated person that will be a go-to and will be doing, canvassing and appearing at events and supplying that information to try to sign folks up to take that first step of a home energy audit. There's some funding for marketing materials, and we actually, thought, well, maybe there's something even, better that we can do to kind of sweeten the pot. So we've talked about different ways that we can encourage people to get involved and take that first step. Again, they're tying together the incentives that are available that are pretty lucrative, to help, fund investments in, whether it's high efficiency boilers or electrification or potentially renewable. So, that we will kind of take the folks that we have through intake and maybe have things like raffles where they can get an added benefit for just participating. They have no obligation to do anything at the end of the day, but hopefully, what the Mass Save folks can do is show them, what the benefit is. And again, if people want to get engaged and involved in also the climate discussion, these are the steps that they can be taking.
Thank you. Is this funding, if I may, Scott, a person who's already on staff, or are we creating a new position for this?
This would be a part-time position that we would put out for response. Yep.
Okay, Scott, one last question. Does the city have a way to take advantage of the service as well? We have a lot of buildings, and I think you started with buildings are the, the biggest place that we have a carbon footprint. Do we
Yeah.
have a way of doing our own mass save audit or something like that?
Right. So we, as a green community, we participate in the competitive grant rounds every year for funding for specific projects. National Grid, we have an excellent representative in the area, Lori Timmerman, who meets fairly regularly, almost quarterly, with us, Public Works. They really try to marry their incentive programs with what might be coming up in terms of projects in the schools and within the city buildings. We put in an application that hopefully will be coming before you soon with some funding tied to it for some lighting upgrades in some of the facilities, as well as looking at putting in an energy management system at the rink. There's a huge savings that can be captured if we really basically simple things that just aren't a part of some of the current infrastructure of the timing and the cycling of different equipment can result in huge savings. So most of it is through our municipal rep from National Grid. They provide audit services for us at no cost, and they really do partner with us on preparing for Green Communities grants. And also, they are literally Lori, and you'll meet her at some point. She has been fantastic in providing Public Works and alerting to us what's available for funding.
Thanks, Greg. I'm sorry to take up so much time, Scott and Greg. I know you have somewhere else you need to be, so you've answered all my questions. Thank you.
Sure.
No, good questions. Thank you. Tony, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple other, sorry, Greg, to hold you up, but.
You can apologize to Rick Noonan.
Okay. So I'm seeing there's $11,000 for the,
Did you just lose, Tony?
We did.
Okay.
It happens. Tony? He's looking for a grant to improve the internet service up his way.
is this $40,000 a year for 3 years? So it's a total of 120?
No, as I mentioned, it's something that we will have to reassess depending upon the targets that we hit in the first year. I believe, I can't remember if that is the max or if you can go, I think maybe the max was around 60. So we'll kind of assess how things go, and then we will actually propose a new budget for year 2 and year 3.
Yeah, and I know when I was with the schools that we National Grid very aggressively tries to get you to do these upgrades to lower the energy that you're using, because that's in their benefit also, because then they don't have to build out on power distribution and power plant. So they really have been aggressively with municipalities. They've come in with an awful lot of incentive programs. So that's it. Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments, I'll make the motion. I move that Budget and Finance Committee vote to accept or to recommend to the City Council that we accept under Mass General Law 4453A a private grant from the National Grid / Mass Save sponsored Community First Partnership Grant in the amount of $40,000 for the purpose of supporting education and outreach surrounding energy efficiency, and I so move.
Second.
Further questions or comments? Roll call vote. Councillor Gross?
Yes.
Councillor Worthley?
Yes.
Councillor Memhard, yes. Passes unanimously. We hope we put it to good use. And Greg, good luck at the Planning Board.
Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the holiday long weekend.
Thank you, Greg.
See you soon.
Yes, you too. So unless the councilors have any other objection, we'll go back to the beginning of our scheduled agenda, posted agenda. I believe, Kenny, you're going to speak to the first item, the memorandum from the Director of Elder Services regarding continuing that.
Yes, if I may, through the chair. This morning, I did talk to Elise, and we need additional information from the grantor. So we're looking to continue this matter to the next meeting with no
Very good.
objection.
With no objection. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elise.
Yeah,
For
thank
sure,
you,
Elise.
Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Have a great
So-
weekend, everybody.
You too.
So there'll be no vote on that motion this evening, and it'll be continued. The next item on the posted agenda is from our Public Health Director, Max Schenk, requesting approval to accept a 2022 Community Health Inclusion Index mini grant in the amount of $10,000.
Thank you,
Max?
counselors. So
Well,
I
welcome
am-
and speak to that.
The fortunate part for me is that I don't have to say much. Jennifer Donnelly is the head of our Mass in Motion Cape Ann program, and she'll be
Excellent.
presenting the information for you and providing any responses to questions that you may have. Thank
Jennifer,
you.
it's good to see you again.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Max. So for those who are new counselors, hi, I'm Jennifer Donnelly. I work in the health department coordinating the Mass in Motion grant program, and that's a Department of Public Health grant, focuses on working with the communities around nutrition, food access, physical activity, and active living. We are a Cape Ann regional grant, so the health department houses me and hosts me, but my work stretches across our 4 Cape Ann communities. This mini grant that was awarded runs until the end of June 2022. It's $10,000 for us to utilize a tool that will allow us to do some assessments to make our communities more accessible for physical activity purposes for those with mobility limitations and individuals with disabilities. So for the work that I do around active transportation, it was a nice marriage. It's also a great way for us to support some of the efforts going on around the open space and rec master planning and work that's going on, things that have been identified there. So we'll be working to try to find out among those in the community that have mobility limitations and individuals that have disabilities, where they want to have better access to, and then going out, assessing those locations, and the funds will, although they're small, there may be an improvement or two that we could make to a location or two in each community, we're hoping. So the assessment tool will give us different recommendations. It kind of grades it in a sense, and will give us recommendations as to what would be needed to make it more inclusive. So we're not just looking at a particular park, but also how do people get to the park? What is the sidewalk like? Things like that. And I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Councilor Gross, questions?
Not really, not right now. Maybe in a minute.
Councilor Worthley?
Berkeley go.
Just a comment, if I could. So first of all, thank you, Max, and thank you, Jennifer, for bringing this to us. It's always great to be on budget and finance and having money coming into the city and not necessarily looking at expenditures. I'm sure Kenny has some expenditures coming up at some point, right? So during the first snowstorm we had this year, I got a constituent who wrote to me saying that St. Anne's School wasn't accessible to her and her children in terms of the sidewalks. And so I sent a message to Mike Hale. We love him, and this is not a knock on Mike or the DPW. He said it wasn't even something that they had planned on doing sidewalks towards the schools. And it got me to thinking, if we're looking at identifying additional ways to improve mobility and access to different areas, can we also, and this is more of a programmatic thing, make a note to also share that information with the Department of Public Works to say, okay, we've given more access to XYZ place, but if we're not plowing, sanding, snow blowing, whatever, that becomes inaccessible again. So it's got nothing to do with this grant, except we have you in front of us, and I figured this is the chance to just get that message delivered. If you could just pass that on when the time comes and you've identified new locations, if you can remember to make it completely accessible during all weather conditions.
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I would like to speak to that.
Please.
Just thank you. Yeah. So you bring up a really great point. We do work in conjunction with DPW. So they, and Mike he was actually a part of a partners meeting that I held to let people, folks that I work with, to let them know about the grant, what our plans are. So DPW will definitely be kept apprised as to what we're hoping to advocate for. In terms of the snow clearance, as you may know, Governor Baker's age-friendly Massachusetts kind of master plan actually calls for communities to focus on snow clearance. And we, as the city of Gloucester, and also our whole region, is a designated age and dementia friendly region. So it is really important for us as a community to focus on snow clearance. Right now, it is kind of up to the businesses and residents really focusing on the sidewalks. Some communities, such as the city of Somerville this year, started a pilot program whereby their municipality is working to clear sidewalks. So that's a pilot program they did get grant funding for, and they also got support through Walk Boston, which happens to be one of my technical advisors for my Mass in Motion grant. So there are different things we could always look at down the road to kind of bring the snow clearance up to more attention. And yeah, it's something that I hear as well. So.
Well, Jennifer,
Thanks.
you kind of could be better on that. We'd probably be consulting you at some point.
Yeah.
Relative to this grant, I support it. I love it's music to my
Thank
ears
you.
that you're working with Mike.
Yeah.
And none of what I was saying is ever meant as a dig on Mike's and the DW's work. It's just it came to my attention during the storm. I'm glad to hear.
Yes,
you're
I
working
know.
together.
Dan, thank you. And feel free, anyone, to reach out to me if you ever have questions or concerns about anything that I'm working on, or you hear from your constituents. Thanks.
Thank you.
If I could, Scott,
Yes,
Jennifer,
please.
I do have one question on that, the governor's. Did he put any funding into that, or is that the usual go do it, but you're on your own, and Somerville got grants, and we'll see. Let's wait a couple of years when the grant money dries up and see what the story is then, because that in order to do these things, we have to take money from elsewhere.
Sure. Yeah. So two separate things. Massachusetts has an age-friendly kind of action plan or master plan where they have different items that are priorities, goals. Snow clearance is one of those items. He did not designate per se grant funding for snow clearance, but some communities have found other grant funding or leverage municipal dollars to pilot out some, programs. Again, though, when you think about having municipal staff being involved in clearing snow of sidewalk, that's, again, more manpower that you would need. So again, that would probably, I would imagine, result in an increase of dollars needed for the Department of Public Works. So whether that would be something that grant funding could support, or municipal dollars would have to support something like that. But just because it was mentioned and I knew of the city of Somerville doing that pilot this winter, I just thought I'd mention that. Something to think about.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Good question again, Tony, and thank you. And it's good to keep that on our radar. Any other questions?
Nope.
Being none, I'll proceed with the motion. Budget and Finance recommends that the City Council accept under Mass General Law 4453A a 2022 Community Health Inclusion Index CHII mini grant, a state grant from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, Office of Local and Regional Health, Mass in Motion Municipal Wellness and Leadership Program, MIM, and the Office of Health Equity in the amount of $10,000 to support and build upon our Mass in Motion work to identify needs for those with mobility limitations using the CHII or CH2 tool. The grant period is from January 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2022, and there is no local grant, no local match required. And I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further questions or discussion? All in favor? Roll call vote. Those are the days. Councillor Gross,
Yes.
Councillor Worthley,
Yes.
Councillor Memhard, yes. Thank you for your good work, Jennifer, and thank you, Max.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
You
Thanks,
too.
everyone.
All right. So the next item is a $2,250 donation acceptance for the benefit of our Veterans Services. And Adam, are you here with us this evening, or are we going to go ahead and accept this without?
Don't believe he's here, Councilor Memhard.
Right.
Take,
I believe that we told Adam that these are just in recognition of his good work. We're seeing these on a regular and routine basis and with greater frequency. And I don't feel, unless the committee feels otherwise, that Adam needs to take time out of his schedule to make the presentation to us. We have 6 donations from individuals and community organizations and businesses, totaling $2,250. Are there any questions from the committee?
Councilman Memhard, I have no objection to moving forward without a city staff person. And frankly, I wouldn't mind if we started working on a policy that says if there's no city match, that we don't necessarily need to drag city employees to come to something like this for donations. That's separate from what's on the agenda tonight, but gets me thinking about being efficient with city staff time. So.
Yeah, although as you've commented before, it's certainly very appropriate for us to recognize their accomplishments in the donations that are coming in.
Absolutely. So I have no objection to moving forward without him here, though.
Tony?
yeah, no, I have no objection. And I think that, something is not, I think we might have even told him that,
Yes, we did.
Yeah, for these, he doesn't have to show up. So.
Yep.
Right.
So, yeah.
So Budget and Finance moves to accept cash donations under Mass General Law 4453A to support our Cape Ann Veteran Services in the amount of $2,250 from the following named members within our community. And I so move.
Second.
Further discussion, questions? Roll call vote. Councilor Gross.
Are we thanking, sorry. Do we have a way
As
of
you asked-
thanking these people or no? Sorry.
I would think we clarified, that's an appropriate, good question. I think we clarified that Adam at Veteran Services certainly is. If we wish to do anything further on our own, I think one reason that he's getting such a good response is that he's doing a very good job of recognizing and celebrating these donations.
Right.
He's certainly on a roll.
So I think I asked at the full council if we could work on something, a thank you from the council too. So I'll bring that up with Val at our next, Councilor Gilman at our next governance meeting.
That'd be great. So did we vote this down?
We didn't.
Nope. Moved and seconded, but.
Okay,
No.
Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Councilor Worthley,
Yes,
Councilor Memhard, yes, and thank you, Adam.
Yes.
thank you.
Motion passes unanimously, 3-0. Item 4, we've taken care of in terms of the cultural districts. The next item is an interesting one before us. We're trying to solve the pervasive mystery of the Good Harbor Beach Creek pollution. And we have a memorandum from our CFO for a supplemental appropriation and a budgetary request in the amount of $120,000 to help the city do so. John, would you like to speak to that?
Well, I can speak to how the funding is going to work. I will defer certainly to Max Schenk about how this came up, but it does seem to be a situation that we do want to solve. So,
Yes.
at this point, we have a proposal from an engineering firm, Woodard and Curran. We've done business with them for years. Other municipalities, they've been doing this type of thing for many, many years. And it would seem to be a very appropriate expenditure of dollars from stabilization fund in order to be able to, figure out what the problem is and what the source is, and then have solutions proposed.
I'd agree to that, since my constituents in this ward of the city enjoying Good Harbor Beach are very perturbed that our Good Harbor Beach Creek is not currently safe to swim in with your children. So Max, do you, or I don't know if Rachel's on with you as well, wish to speak to this and help provide some of the background and how it came about that Woodward and Curran was selected and what their schedule looks like?
Sure. What I'll do is, I would be completely remiss if I didn't mention the fact that this has basically been Rachel's work the entire time. She's definitely the Eagle Scout of the department. So folks may remember in the newspaper and everything else, the creek being shut down several times last year because of high bacterial counts. Rachel, being the person who does the testing for the beaches for the community, really took it to heart and did an investigation, worked with DPW. And, long story short, and Rachel will get into more of the details, it was decided that this is a situation that, because of this possible scope of it, is beyond the capacity of not only the department, but also the DPW. They've got bigger things to have to worry about at the moment. So having said all of that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, and she can give you more of a background of how we got to this point.
Welcome back, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you, Max. Thank you, everyone, for having me here tonight to listen to what I have to say about the Good Harbor Creek and hopefully some exciting solutions that we are about to hopefully happen upon with Woodward and Curran. Like Max said, we had a reoccurring issue with high enterococci levels throughout the summer and fall in the Good Harbor Creek. We were not able to isolate a specific pollution source with the resources and constraints that we have, but I did work extensively with DPW. We did hundreds of samples together. DPW TV'd many lines in East Gloucester that could have been, many sewer lines, forgive me, that could have been the problem. And we didn't find anything that was a smoking gun, so to say, as far as what is exactly causing this. So we knew that we needed to outsource some of this work to folks who are professionals at figuring out where pollution comes from and giving us some advice for remediation. So I got 4 proposals when I reached out to engineering firms, and I presented them to the Board of Health, and then I formed a subcommittee to review the bids, and this is one that we felt was most appropriate. So I'm very excited to have a very high confidence in these engineers. I've met with them personally, and I do believe that we'll have a lot more answers, at least in a few months, if this goes through. I will say DPW today was just fixing a potential problem on Hart Street today. So who knows if that is or is not related to any of the creek issues, but it's good that that's getting fixed. And I am very excited to hopefully be working with this firm, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, there was an appropriate cost to pay for having Hart Street closed today, that we're working on that very thorny issue. Councilors, questions? Councilor Gross?
Yeah, Rachel, I'm looking at the reports that were done from, let's see, May through January. And so you've determined that the Hart Street station is not an issue. Eastern Ave down to that, is that what I'm reading correctly on those? Or are those, like you said, you haven't found a smoking gun, so you haven't ruled out any of those issues, including the septic systems that are in the areas?
It's a great question. Several lines in the area of Eastern Ave, in the area of Hart Street, a portion of Hart Street itself, were TV'd by DPW. And there were minor perforations in the linings found that were repaired, but nothing that pointed to a source of pollution that would have been responsible for those levels of enterococci. However, not every line in that area was TV'd. So we can't rule out a sewer line in that area or other city infrastructure. Certainly we've ruled out several pieces of it. And then as far as septic systems go, we did look into a couple failing septic systems on Beechcroft, which Craig, our Title V inspector, promptly responded to. And the Beechcroft septic systems in question were quite far away from the creek. And after doing a little bit more of an in-depth study of how bacteria travels and the tidal influence on the days that we had high levels of enterococci in that area, it didn't seem very likely to me that that was contributing significantly whatsoever to the creek. However, this is something that Woodard and Curran will be able to confirm for us through dye testing if it becomes necessary.
And from Thatcher Road, have they been running anything from the Thatcher Road pump station towards the Hart Street station?
We didn't TV anything over there, and we did check the function of Hart Street pump station and the Thatcher Road pump station both times. In both instances, they were functioning correctly. It's possible that we're missing something. We may need to do a more in-depth investigation into the wet wells below those pump stations, but the first step, first of all, is to do human marker testing to make sure that we are actually dealing with human bacteria from human waste. Our plan for remediation changes significantly if we can attribute this to animal droppings. However, I do not expect that to be the case. And then some dye testing and some illicit discharge investigations in the areas that I got the highest samples. So we're going to be focusing on those hotspots, which are near 127, Cross Street, Hart Street, and then over in the Beechcroft area, just to roll that up.
How high above the normal course of living are the levels that would pass?
The safe level is 104 colony forming units of enterococci. Our initial test on June 9th was almost 1,200 colony forming units of enterococci, which is the highest it's been in recorded history, spans back several decades of testing at the Good Harbor Creek. And we got as high as over 2,000 colony forming units in late October.
So it's a pretty direct source then.
It's hard to say if it's multiple factors. I will say that after speaking with the environmental engineers, it's oftentimes that we find multiple things that have gone wrong, infrastructure, and among other things. It's common for things to wear and tear over time. And so it could be multiple things, but certainly there's a high concentration of enterococci entering the creek at some point.
Good, thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilor Worthley?
I just have a few questions. First, I have no question that this is a priority and will support the funding for it, the supplemental appropriation. I do have a question regarding the levels. And I'm a layperson. I do not want to pretend that I know anything about the details of this, both for Max or Rachel. So thank you for the work you're doing. I used to work at Good Harbor Beach 20 something years ago, and there was a point in time where the creek was closed and Long Beach was closed, but we kept the full beach open because there was some magic with the waves that we thought made it safe. And I don't want to say that was a money related question, but it may have been. But I wonder a very different question. When the CSO project came down, I was looking at a lot of things. I had a contact with the state, and they talked about impervious surfaces, paving, that increases the runoff, that then allows for the water that's in the groundwater to increase and flow basically downhill into the creek. And I'm not one to point fingers anywhere specifically. I think that the question should be asked in general. Is there a change, for example, at the old Fuller School property / Gloucester Crossing that could then increase the runoff that goes to Days Pond and the creek and heads that way? Could there be any efforts being performed? And I'm not trying to play this card, but anything happening on Webster Street with the construction of the school and anything that's driving more water towards Eastern Ave, down Webster Street, Eastern Ave to the creek. I'm a layperson, but there is some sort of, I understand gravity and things going downhill.
Absolutely.
So I want to just throw that question in. And if it turns out that that's the cause, we're not going to say, okay, Gloucester Crossing, you're going to go away or the school's going to stop. I don't see that, but it might inform us on our other decision-making, special council permits, development, et cetera, that could then be a level of standard that we need to maintain if people can keep impervious surfaces on their properties. So it's a very general question, but I wonder if this study could somehow, I don't know, aggregate information on rain or water flow from those
Absolutely. It's a
sources.
great question. And let me just quickly speak to your first point, which is one thing that we look for with bacterial proliferation is water temperature and water circulation. So because of the waves and the lower water temperature at Good Harbor Beach, that's often why it's very safe at Good Harbor Beach most of the time, even if we have super high levels with this creek, which is really still and warm. So just to put your mind at ease
where Long Beach was also closed with big waves, it did raise the question about how could it have been the case, but that's old data.
Well, when you have a certain level of enterococci that's high enough, then the circulation oftentimes is not enough. And
ultimately, I think the safety of the public is our responsibility, as it is
Absolutely.
yours and Max as well. So that's why I raised that question.
No,
Thank you.
absolutely. It's a great question. And we do monitor, we don't monitor Long Beach because it's not technically Gloucester, but we monitor those beaches. I monitor it myself and I take it quite seriously, as Max will love to tell you. But to speak to your question more generally, yes, it is possible that a instance of construction disturbed a piece of infrastructure, and that could be why we're seeing some increased levels. We have no indication of that either way at this point, but I will mention that we have tested Day Pond actually, and it wasn't significantly high, surprisingly, based on the factors that I live right across the street from it. So I was expecting it to be high, but it's not. And I also would say that bacteria would have to travel quite far from both of those locations. And while it can certainly do that, it would have to be sort of the perfect circumstance for it to come from all the way from Webster Street. But also one thing that we're getting out of this contract with Woodard and Curran, hopefully, is that they would be providing us with really extensive maps of our drainage system. So we'll have a better understanding of how things travel and how things are mapped out and how stormwater and runoff and rain events affect our ecosystem. So
I'm eager to see that. That's good news.
Yeah, me too.
Just following up on that, Rachel, can you speak to the issue of how rising sea level may also be causing infiltration that again then is causing infrastructure failure?
Certainly, not so much sea level to my knowledge, but the increase of storm surge certainly threatens infrastructure in ways that could compromise the integrity of a number of factors that could relate to the creek. However, I would say more so when it comes to climate change, water temperatures being hotter and increased intensity in rain events certainly affects the water quality of our beaches. Our water is really quite warm this year, and I've only been with the department for less than a year so far, but and I do see how it's affecting water in general, and climate change certainly has its role to play here.
Thank you. Any other councilor questions?
I just want to point out that actually when all this testing was done, no construction had happened at the new school site.
That's good to know. Thank you for that correction, Tony.
So, but yeah, good luck. Chasing those things can be very tedious, and let's hope that Woodard and Curran can live up to their reputation and find out what we need to know and plug the holes, stick the finger in the dike.
I will say I've not found it tedious whatsoever, but but I see what you're saying. I appreciate it, and I'm always happy to answer any additional questions about the status of this project.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Could I just, sorry.
I was just going to say that, Rachel, as we've discussed, I look forward as this gets underway and we get some traction here that we can hold a community event working with you and the department to better educate the Ward 1 and Gloucester community about what you're doing and why it's a problem and how it's going to be resolved or addressed. Jeff, you had another question?
Well, I was going to say, whoever hired Rachel made a good decision. I don't know if you did that, Max, or not, but I really love and appreciate your enthusiasm for something as specific as this, but meaningful too. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The department's fortunate to have a very good team, and definitely Rachel is one of my proudest moments in hiring.
Thank you. It's my sincerest honor to serve the city, especially in this manner. So thank you, everyone.
I'll toast to that.
we've come a long way in water, water quality in my lifetime. My wife has a favorite story. They lived on Lock.
Oh, I lost Tony.
Long Beach. Tony? Gloucester
I want
calling
to hear the
Tony?
story.
You may have to tell us that.
I'll tell you, can you hear me?
You're on.
Oh, we got you
Yes,
now.
you are.
Yeah,
I want to hear
nah,
the story.
forget it. We'll just have the vote.
Well, we
Call us
can.
later.
Very good. I'll
It was a
make
good-
the motion. I move that the Budget and Finance Committee recommended the City Council the approval of a supplemental appropriation 2022 SA 12 in the amount of $120,000 from the Capital Project Stabilization Fund, fund balance account as noted. There's your key, Tony. Account as noted to the Capital Projects Capital Stabilization Fund, DPW, Professional and Technical Services account as noted to fund the cost of an engineering investigation at Good Harbor Creek, and I so move.
Second. Council Memhard, I only have one question left for the treasurer, Mr. Dunn. Does this
Please.
require 5 votes from the council or 6 votes from the council? Or is it a stabilization fund transfer?
Require 6.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Vote's been made and seconded, and roll call vote. Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Councilor Worthley,
Yes.
Councilor Memhard, yes. Motion passes unanimously, and we wish Rachel and Max in our department and their investigations all the best of luck.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and John and Kenny as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
And unless I'm missing anything, that brings us to the final item on the agenda relating to our auditor's overdrawn report.
Yes, thank you. So we have 17 accounts that are overdrawn this time. And I'll just highlight the major changes. Obviously, the snow and ice, the numbers are increasing, and there's also new accounts. Just to give you a, this report is as of the beginning of the week. This is a vendor week, so we're continuing to pay our vendors for snow removal. So we're currently the entire snow and ice budget. We're currently $391,000 in a deficit, and this is a legal deficit for snow and ice. I'm sure, I believe it was in this previous city council agenda of raising the spending limit to $1.4 million by the CAO, by Jill. That was part of the Municipal Modernization Act that changed. And I believe I mentioned that last time. Previously, the city council, and I think Scott, you remember this. I feel like we were coming to the council every 2 weeks, raising that spending limit. So right now we're at 1.4, and hopefully that will be enough. So knock on wood, sunny days ahead, hopefully. Another item is the rink, the sick leave buyback, $82. And for the first time in a long time, we have a school account, and also in the red. You don't see that very often, but we've communicated. We've talked to the school department, and they will remedy that by the next meeting. They've had a lot of contractual. There's been some union contracts that have been settled, so they've been moving some money around. So this is one last item that they need to take care of, and we've been assured that this will be taken care of. I've talked to Gary and I've talked to Cody, and I feel confident that they will take care of this for the next meeting. And that's all I have, unless the committee has any questions.
Gentlemen?
I just, on that school one, Kenny, that's only 3,700, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and they had a bunch of them memorandums of agreement or memorandums of understanding that just went through their, so we're probably going to see a couple of more of these, but that's that's just routine. It just
Correct.
happened to, yeah. No, I changed computers. That's why I was a little distracted. Hopefully this one will be, the new one just did the same thing as the old one. So I'm on my own now.
Councilor Memhard?
Yes, Councilor Worthley.
Thank you. Kenny, I have a couple of questions. Firstly, overall, could we, if it's not too hard, have this also show with a percentage on it? Because to Tony's point, 3,000 from the school budget is a rounding error away from zero, right? If that were the shellfish department, that's a bigger percentage, right? And so I think it would be helpful to just, at least for me, to get a sense of how overdrawn they are. Is that an easy click of a button, or is that complicated? Because I don't want you to spend a lot of time if it's more than a click. At least that's helpful. That'd be helpful to me.
Can I just mention something on that? Jeff, you have to understand, these are a snapshot in time.
Of course.
So
I understand that.
Putting percentage to these things is, maybe the large ones, but I understand what you're trying to say, to show that, that this isn't much of that budget. They all get reconciled in the end.
It's a question of our focus. I understand timing, and we're on a fiscal year budget and a calendar year budget with some vendors and all that. I get that. So I'm guessing in almost everything here, it's timing. But I think there'd be a percentage where we say it's still worth our time, but it's not going to be worth putting attention to it if it's a fraction of a percent versus we have a problem that's brewing. We're 3/4 of the way through the year and we need to be alarmed by that. So that would just help for me in processing the information. But at no point am I saying, whoa, Shellfish Advisory Committee, you're 3,000% over. Well, because they have a small bill that was due at that point. You know what I mean? So I understand that, but it's how my brain would work. I don't know if that's a fair question to ask, Scott, or too much for Kenny for you to do.
If I could comment, so that percentage in time could be difficult only because when we run these reports, we run this on, for example, at the beginning of the week, and we do allow departments to correct it. So, and then there's also, like, for example, this is a vendor week. So like snow and ice, because I'm giving you the latest and greatest. There's a warrant in front of me that I'm reviewing right now. So the number will, just in the matter of days, these numbers do increase. And also because of also encumbrances, we're also approving POs. So I guess we would have to change our process. And then the other question I would also have is a percentage of that line item, or is it a percentage of the expenditure category, or is it their entire department? Like, for example, like the school, that $3,000, I mean, if you compare that to their overall, because for years I was told by the school many years, and this is previous CFOs ago, that they have a bottom line budget. So they would make the argument and say, no, you would divide that number by 40 million, which would be, less than 1%. So I don't know would you want to see it based off that line item or the entire budget? And that would be on the school side. And then on the city side, I'm not sure how you'd want to see that. And I think it would be a little difficult on our end to catch that bouncing ball because, we would be able to see it on Monday, but then it could change today. And then a department might say, well, no, it's not that number today. So I don't want to get too into the, into the details of grant. That's my only concern on that. I mean, then we'll provide anything that the committee, is looking for.
Well, first, I want to be reasonable, and I don't want to, again, the goal is to be more efficient and be helpful and not to have you just run around and gather more reports. My thinking is if we already have a report that's based on something, right? The numbers, I'm not asking them to associate with different line items or total budget. If it's in brackets, it's negative. If it's not in brackets, it's positive, right? So there's already that comparison, but I don't know what we're comparing to.
Jeff, right? It would be, excuse me for interrupting, but
no.
I mean, I have the last 6 years budgets here on my shelf next to me, and it's a very quick reference, as Kenny says, to look at which part of ordinary expense or whatever part of a departmental budget these represent. But I would argue that your suggestion of trying to do it as a calculation in the context of Kenny's report is probably not very practical or necessarily helpful.
And I agree, just as the negative or positive is, it's a moving target. Like you said, on Monday, it's going to be X. On Thursday,
And
it's gonna be Y.
I'm welcome to give you my most recent copy of the city budget. You can see, looking for yourself, in each of the 3 line items for a particular department, you can see what those totals are, and it's a very quick reference point. But again, I don't think from the calculation that Kenny's going through in this particular worksheet, it's necessarily relevant. Tony, I don't know if you have any thought.
I would say it's just as relevant as the numbers we have, right? I see a negative number, but compared to what?
Well, the budgets are also on the city's website. You don't have to have the book in front of you. You can, Jeff, if you want, there are several of them there. And also on the school stuff, we have no action to take on that, right, Kenny, unless it's something that we need to, last year's bill that we need to pay with this year's money, and then that comes to us. But otherwise, there's no action taken by us on the school stuff. But so yeah, it's really helpful to actually, it's an excellent learning tool for practical reasons to take this and look at the budget. It really gives you some feeling of how the budget, which is this is a living document, that's kind of a static document. So it really helps you watch how this works. So that's my only suggestion, is it's really a good exercise. That's how I, learned it all was that. But fortunately, I also had people who were willing to help me, through that too. So
Thank you both, Scott and Tony, for that, and Kenny. I guess I'm still unsure if we're not in the administration, we're making these executive decisions. We're not changing the school budget. What is the value of the report? And again, I wasn't asking you to do more work. If you have this report, is it click button and it has a column that has percentage in it? I don't want to ask people to do more work. But what's the point of the report that we get every other week if we shouldn't be alarmed if there's a high, again, it's a high number in one department? Other than just being in the know, what would be the value?
If I could, this report's been going on well before, my time. But I've always felt the committee, especially going into budget season, they want to see where the issues are, especially at the end of the year, where the transfers will need to come, what are the problems, what transfers need to be covered, perhaps look at the next year's budget and say, okay, well, in this account, it's been in the red, and maybe, look at the next year's budget and just see so these are kind of the potential issues and kind of the potential concerns for the next year's, budget. The snow and ice, as Scott knows, and I'm sure Tony's seen this over the years, and I'm sure Council Worthy, you saw this prior. It's season to season. I know some communities that they well under budget snow and ice, let's say $100,000. And then there's year-end transfers of up $1 million because they know they'll go well over $1 million. But I know we've increased the snow and ice budget at least twice since my time here, and I believe it's now $766,600. However, there's only been 2 years that we actually were under that amount. So unfortunately, once you increase that baseline, then you're held to that number each year. So, out of this report, that is my biggest concern, is snow and ice. Everything else, I think it's manageable. And really this tool is, a lot of departments, they don't want to be on this list. So typically when we, my office, we do a great job by sending, this is the final list. The list prior to this was actually much larger. And we send this out to departments and they don't want to be on this list. So they take action right away. So I find that it's a tool also for my office. So then departments will, try to take care of the deficit. And also it's alerting you, letting you know that there's a potential issue and there should be a transfer coming, at the end. And especially at the last meeting, this way here, we can look at it and say, okay, let's make sure we take care of all of our deficits. So it's almost like a little bit of a, it's a sheet that, carries, it's a, a scoring sheet that you look at and say, okay, did we cover all our deficits? Did we miss anything? So
that's helpful. And to the extent that it's information that we might use to help formulate our thinking on the budget, that's where a percentage for me would feel like it meant something. Like if this is 1% over, or if it's a 50% over, there's a different feeling. I can't compare that unless I take the manual budget and compare it to this. But what I'm saying is your calculation is compared to something already. So I was just thinking that if it's an Excel or some sort of format, there's a button to press that says, what is that difference in a percentage? I'm not asking for reports to be done at different times or additional work to be done. I just like to be able to see it and have it be a comparison to something that is tangible. But I will take you up, Scott, on your offer to look at the prior year's budgets. I just don't want to depend on my math to do take a paper copy of last year's budget and take a digital version of something here when there might be another way to do that.
Yeah,
but I think I beat that one to death.
It does put it in a helpful context, as you point out.
Yeah, it's just everything can be compared to what, right? But speaking of which, the one that surprised me here was building liability insurance. Looks like it's almost $100,000 over budget. I don't know again what the budget is for that. Hang on, I'm looking at.
So if I could, everything on this report, these are all, so everything in the brackets, those are all deficits, right, in these accounts here. So, each one, until there's a, I know for years, I know some former committee members would say, I thought we took care of that. We've talked about it. I mean, we can talk about it 100 times, but until there's a OBT, which is an ordinary budget transfer, to take care of that, if it's within the department, or there's an SBT taking it from one department to this department, it will be here until, June 30th or June 45th. It's going to stay here until then. We can talk about it 100 times, until then, but it will always be here until there's an actual transfer. And I can tell you in our Munis system, all the vendor type of, like the ordinary accounts, Munis will not allow a purchase requisition, a PO change order, unless there's money in those accounts. So generally those are there are, for example, with the snow and ice, those are instances where they could deficit spend. Salaries, we can't really stop salaries, due to federal and state laws. We can't do that. So I feel with our Munis system that we currently have, it really does help us to limit a lot of these deficits. And, I feel like it's a tool, for our office. So I don't know if John, I know John was just on, if John wants to talk about, any of these, deficits, feel free.
Don, any insight?
Again, as Kenny said, I mean, we have deficits that arrive during the course of the year. But, I've been here for 8 years. And other than, I hope it's never repeated, the snowstorms of 2015, we have pretty much ended each year in the right place. So are there certain lines, are there certain departments that in May of each year are underwater? We solve it. I guess I would, even take a look at from a certain point of view, the school department. From our point of view, we budget one single dollar amount, $40+ million. So to be truthful, it really doesn't matter, whether individual accounts in a school department are underwater or not, because it's up to the school committee to solve that. But, from our point of view, and maybe we need to take a look at the ordinance, what it says. I mean, I would say that we only should be reporting in the school department, whether, they're up or down on the $44 million.
And so I think to that point, I just want to be helpful and prepared, but I don't know if there's nothing we can really do about it. Then this is just a thanks for
their timing difference. I mean, we could well ask John to speak to the $100,000 overage in flood and building insurance, or to the Council on Aging's overage of $95,000 in their hourly wages. But ultimately, I'm anticipating that that comes down to timing differences.
It does. In many cases, it certainly does. And again, I think it may be beneficial that we not only give you, as it is known as the naughty list, but we give you, another report that basically says where every department is. So yes, there are always going to be, as Kenny mentioned, timing things that happen within department specific accounts. But, overall, we're in pretty good shape. Yes, there are some basic departments that are underwater, but there are, many more departments that are, on a positive side. So would love to work together and make sure that everybody gets the right information.
If I could just clarify one last thing, Council Chairman. I'm foreseeing at some point we say, if it's not over X percentage, we don't need to worry about it. And that might be a formulaic thing. And I want to tell everybody what the number is because I don't have one in mind. But it could be where you say, if it's over X percentage, let the council know. If it's 1%, I'm not saying I don't care. I'm just saying it would be another piece of information that might be helpful in informing us when we need to be concerned or when we don't need to be concerned. So yeah, it's not up to me. Scott? Scott, I see John Dunn waving.
Sure, John.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny is reporting to you the way that he needs to report to you. So, if you would like to change that methodology, then I think we would all kind of raise our hand and say, hello, we'd love to. But Kenny is putting this report out because that's what he's required to do.
By this committee or by the council, by state law? I'm learning as we go here.
My understanding that it's in the, it's either in the city charter or there's a code of ordinance. I was just looking that up because in the report, it does talk about, I think it's section 2-104. So that's the reason why this report. I mean, I know this report's been going on well before my time. I was told when I first started in the position 12 years ago that I needed to do this report. So we've been doing this report. I know the committee at times, they've said, I know at the beginning, it was every BNF meeting. Then I know in the last few years, they've said, you know what, let's, especially at the beginning of the year where the budget's so new, let's just wait 6 months and then let's start in January and start looking at the account. So looking at it for 6 months as opposed to 12 months. But my understanding, it is something that I do need to report to you. As far as the frequency, I believe that is up to the committee. But again, I can provide any report that you would like. I think I'm just concerned about percentages and when those reports are. I mean, I would almost rather just run a report. My concern is if I provide too much detail, you may get lost in the weeds. And then I might have to come and save you. So that's my only concern, because I can provide all the detail that you would want and hope for and more. I can provide all of that for you. But my concern is that I just don't want you to get lost, in the weeds.
Thank you. My thinking is if we get percentages, then there's less weeds because I will know that if it's 5,000 in one account, it's only a fraction of a percentage. I'm not going to bother. I'll care, but I won't care to take up time in a council meeting or this meeting or your time or John's time to even ask more questions about it. So it's more
at this point, Jeff, I just say so noted, and I think we should take that under consideration.
Okay, thank you.
If I can, I'm very happy with the. You getting an echo? I'm very happy.
Hearing you loud and clear.
All right, I'm very happy with the way this is presented. Probably because I can fully understand it. Jeff, I think you have to understand that there's, you can't have everything 100%. You're not going to be up to speed right away, and you need to have a little patience here on this. And I do highly recommend that you take the time to go look at these accounts in the FY22 budget so that you can see where they are. And then things start to make more sense. And as you see them move through, and it is, we are supposed to oversee the budget. And this is part of overseeing the budget now, but we also have to take it with the understanding that this is a snapshot and that these things all by, June 30th are reconciled, with the exception of the snow and ice, which John said, other than that one horrific year, has always been reconciled. So we're supposed to be kept abreast of, what's going on. And this is, because this is part of our job as oversight of the budget. I mean, that's why we sit on this committee, is to oversee the budget. So, and some of these things will come to us. We will see them. This will give us knowledge of why there is certain transfers from one, certain transfers that need to happen. So
yep.
I find that the format that it's in is very helpful to me because I understand it, but that's why it's very helpful to me. So I think you give yourself a little bit of a break and realize that it takes time to get up to speed. But I really would suggest that you pull out the FY20 and don't be frightened by it. And if you feel free, call Scott or I, and
Yep.
while we're both sitting in front of a computer, we can talk it through. And that makes it really, that really helps out. I know with me, it's so much easier if we're looking at the same thing. It's like, all right, well, here's this line item. Here's how you get there. And there you go. There it is. And I'll tell you what was budgeted, why it's not so. And so that's.
So I think that's awesome. I appreciate both the counselors' offer to help, and Mr. Dunn, Mr. Costa. I would just like to say, for example, Tony, do you know what percentage the rink budget is over budget right now? You've had
I could tell you, if I had a computer I could go on right now, I could tell you in about 2 minutes.
Okay, but I'm just saying it might be actually simpler if the report already is a button click away to say this number is
these guys have a
compared to
lot of
something.
work to do. And if I can do that myself, which I can, and that's my job, that's what I was elected to do, then I go do that.
I'm not trying to say you don't do it or don't know how to do it. What I'm saying is,
No, what I'm saying is that
efficiency.
I'm not asking them to do it for me.
Okay. I think the spreadsheet does it for them. I think it's a button that's pressed, but I don't know the system they're using. I know the spreadsheets I use. I can click percentage and boom, it's right there. So we don't need to spend any more time on this. I just want it to be useful time. And for me, it'd be more useful if I had something to compare it to in real time. But thank you. I will take you up on the offer to go line by line through the budget at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to lend you my prior year's copy, or I'm sure Kenny can dig out one as well.
Thank you.
Nothing wrong with your questions, but again, I don't want to spend too much time trying to reinvent the wheel if there's not a good purpose for the time that's invested here in our Budget and Finance Committee meeting and with the city staff in attendance.
Understood. Thank you, Scott.
If there's nothing else before us tonight, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Councillor Gross.
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Worthley.
Yes.
Everybody
Yes,
go and enjoy dinner.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Memhard, yes, and good night. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you.
Thank
Kenny.
you.
Enjoy
you, John.
dinner, everybody.
Jeff,
Bye-bye.
I'll look forward to following up with you in a day or two here.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Tony. Bye.